Well, welcome back. You're watching Kivumbi 2022. It's time for that panel discussion, just bearing in mind the latest developments that are happening. Only 14 days to the general election, 2 weeks exactly. And the talk in town right now is all to do with the back and forth between two institutions that are critical in the management of the elections. We're talking about the DCI and the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. A little bit earlier on, we ran a story about some of the questions that are being raised in terms of those three foreign nationals, the Venezuelans, who got to the country with sensitive election material. Of course, they were flagged, and we saw how the back and forth between the DCI and IEBC played out. So we want to interrogate that critical question if we are ready for the general election slated for August 9th. Because according to Afula Chabukati, IEBC is ready to give Kenyans a free, fair and credible election. But according to the whispers right now, especially within the political class, many are suspecting foul play in one way or the other. So we'll definitely try and delve deeper into some of the issues that have triggered a political storm with just 2 weeks to the polls. Apart from that, remember that particular weighty ruling from the Supreme Court in 2017. An election is not an event, it's a process. Have we got the process right so far? I'm joined by legal minds right here in studio, and one of them is joining me virtually. We'll get to deliberate about this matters and more. Allow me to introduce the gentleman joining me right here in studio. I'll start with the gentleman on my immediate right, Kipchumba Karori, advocate. It's great to have you with us. Karibu sana to the show.
Thank you, Jesse.
Well, thanks for your time. And we're equally joined by James Mamboleo, who's an advocate. Thanks for your time. Good evening.
Asante sana.
Yes, and equally joined virtually, rather, by Dr. Duncan Ojwang, who's a dean at Africa Nazarene School of Law. Daktari, I hope you can hear me. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. I can hear you. Good evening, colleagues. Asante.
Asante sana. And perhaps, gentlemen, let's start with the latest we've seen in terms of the back and forth between IEBC and the DCI. But remember, this particular edition of Kivumbi 2022 is brought to you by Scoop News, where you can get updated details on the latest developments. Now, Kipchumba, I'm pretty sure you've seen some of the letters that are public right now in terms of the back and forth between IEBC and DCI. At one point, we had the IEBC chair questioning and saying that he's disappointed about the arrest of 3 foreigners. A little bit later on, we even saw the DCI release a statement, and I quote, "The officers had no idea whatsoever that such a foreigner would be arriving in the country carrying highly sensitive, confidential IEBC property, and that the same was intended for a very serious exercise to which the foreigner had no accountability whatsoever from where it was coming from and where it was destined." I mean, we're 2 weeks to the election. Such a conversation is definitely not good. But what make you about this particular news in terms of sensitive election material being transported without being declared to the authorities right here in Kenya?
Jesse, I think we, as a nation, we are in a difficult moment or time because 2 weeks to the election, we see so many balls in the air. But what we must address while sitting in this Kivumbi table is the fact that, number one, we need to ask ourselves, for how long have we been in this circus? It began with the gazetting of the candidates. It took people to start questioning, why haven't we gazetted candidates? Chebukati tells us, I sent a letter on July, somebody saying this. So that is where the symptomatic problem began. And the problem is a normal problem. When the state is undergoing this kind of a transition, there are people within the state who feel like they have not had sufficient time. The 10 years they had, or the 5 years, they still have the hangover of how can we perpetuate the regime that is in place to continue. Because, Jesse, all of us are bright people and we are here. If today a foreigner comes to this country, and we agree, we must also be told what are the protocols of bringing in documents or bringing in assets of IEBC, sensitive or not, or even any other institution. Number two, when you read the long letter from DCI, there are things you don't understand, because if you say these foreigners have expired passports, you want to ask yourself, how are they clear to come to the Kenyan soil? Because in the airport, there are two sections. There is the section where if you do not have documentation, you can't come to this other side, which is our sovereign land. How are they clear to come to this side? Number two is the question of, is that the best way IEBC and DCI could communicate? Because there will always be issues. Intergovernmental problems will always be there, but there are better avenues of solving it without raising political temperature within the country. We all know that election is not about the process, it's about the perception. If the perception is not right, the election, you can do everything, but if people believe you want to steal, you know, carrying out an election is like two things. It's like being a pastor or being a doctor. If somebody believes that you will not do right, a medical procedure, no matter how many papers you have, they will always be suspicious of coming before you. If you are a pastor and people suspect that you do fishy businesses behind their back, they will never listen to you, because it is about people accepting you before they accept what you have. So that IEBC should be like Caesar's wife. It should be beyond reproach. But also what we must ask state instruments of power is that allow IEBC a wiggle room, and for IEBC, be accountable. Accountable to the people of Kenya and accountable to the institutions, because IEBC is not carrying out this election in isolation. But even as we do that, Jesse, we should not kill the credibility of IEBC, because there are certain people who have not campaigned properly.
Interesting developments right there. Mambuleo, do you agree? And perhaps on the bigger picture, these two institutions that are quite critical in the conduction of this particular election being at loggerheads, contradicting each other through statements, Kenyans are left wondering who exactly is saying the truth about these Venezuelans. What's your take on the latest developments?
Jesse, I can tell you for sure that you're going to see a lot of political speak from both sides of the political divide. And they are quite entitled to their opinions on whether IEBC is doing the correct thing or not. Article 38 of the Constitution guarantees every voter in this republic to be given a fair, free election that is accountable, transparent, and verifiable. Now, Article 81 through to Article 88 of the Constitution places the mandate of conducting elections on the Independent Boundaries and Election Commission. Now, what is its role? To conduct elections appropriately, accurately, transparently, in a verifiable and accountable manner. I want to take you back to 2017. This country has seen an election nullified on the basis of the fact only alone that the election was not properly transmitted. Okay? And the courts have said, of course, that the electoral process is a process. And you're not just going to wake up on the 9th or 10th of August and say, now we have a winner, okay? So every Kenyan and every institution is responsible in the way they conduct their affairs by the law. Now, why do I start with politics? Because politicians and political supporters make it look like it is only a political and social process. It's not. It is an entirely legal process. The IEBC is a constitutional commission. It has a mandate under the law. If you read Article 81 of the Constitution all the way to Article 88, there are principles under which this election is supposed to be done. And then on top of that, there is the Election Act and the IEBC Act, all of which have regulations and schedules which show how elections are supposed to be conducted. Now, what I don't find extremely exciting is this, that we want to proceed as if IEBC is beyond criticism, okay? Because if we do that, we are spoiling IEBC. We need to put IEBC on account on a daily basis toward the election. That is the only way we are going to ensure that IEBC does what it's supposed to do. The other thing I don't find correct is to wholesomely blame IEBC even for processes that are already good in place, okay? So what we need to do is have a balanced discussion that ensures that IEBC does the correct thing, not just to bring the house down. Now, with respect to this spat between IEBC and the DCI, I find that, and I agree with Kipchumba on that one, that it is extremely unfortunate, all right? There is a way in which these two institutions, independent but complementary in this electoral process, must work out this process to ensure that every person involved is actually okay with the situation. I should think that IEBC should have a standard procedure on how material coming from outside the country gets here. Okay. And being sensitive material, they can't give James Mamboleo to put in his bag to bring, okay? So one of the issues I find funny there is that this process of bringing that material was looking to me a bit too casual and informal for a very serious process like this one. And I wish that everybody involved would just wait and see how this thing unravels, because I agree entirely that the DCI has a responsibility to investigate. If you come in with some material that looks funny, that touches on national interest, it is the responsibility actually to look at it and say, what are you carrying? Now, it would be wrong for them to see a private citizen carrying electoral material which is not explained, it is not declared, and then leave him to go and say this is IEBC's role. No. What should have happened after that, in my view, should have been probably better communication between these authorities to ensure that that issue is resolved in a way that brings respect and decorum to the offices of the IEBC and the DCI.
So let me get this. No foul play from your point of view in terms of the response we got from the Directorate of Criminal Investigation. No.
It is their responsibility, in my view, if they detect something like that, to come in and investigate. And if they have found something about it, let them tell us. And that's exactly what they did. Now, it is also the responsibility of IEBC to explain that this, and they have tried to explain. So once that has happened, I expected everybody now to judiciously look at those explanations and probably say, maybe IEBC was wrong in allowing this material to be transported in a very casual manner. But now that DCI has unraveled the matter, and if IEBC has given a good explanation, then let the matter end there, so that we actually give some confidence to the process of conducting elections. We are just 2 weeks shy of this election.
Well, let's bring in Duncan Ojwang.
That also speaks to what my senior colleague talks about.
Just briefly here.
The issue of publicly displaying who has won which contract, who has won which contract. Because if we knew, for example, who or which contract Seamless Limited company had, it will be very easy for us to know if James Mamboleo works for Seamless company, we let him go. Number two, we know Jesse Rogers works for Smart Tech, or is it Smart something? Smartmatic. We know these are the staff who will be, handling. I think from where I sit that the election in Kenya is a project for Smartmatic. So they know these are the people handling this project from this client. These are the people handling this project. So it will have been easier for IEBC also to share with the security people at the airport, so that when these people come, they just come and say, we are carrying electoral material. They just declare this is what we are carrying. So that for just accountability, because at the end of the day, if also we allow IEBC to become a power unto itself, there is this danger that will happen. Tomorrow, I will go to Uganda or Tanzania, print ballot papers and walk through JKIA. The question will be, where did these ballot papers come from? So at the end of the day, we cannot. And then also, DCI do the investigation of crimes. IEBC and Article 88, 89 do the business of elections and demarcation of boundaries. So each has their role. IEBC cannot investigate its own problems. They need to go to DCI. So at the end of the day, and then again, as a finality, we need also to ask Mutiambai to take responsibility. When we see spats between officers beneath him, we ask ourselves, what does Mutiambai do as a person? If you are the CEO of Standard Group, you cannot allow a manager in editing department to be communicating with some people in the ministry.
Interesting. Dr. Ojwang, a lot has been said on this back and forth that perhaps is punching holes in terms of trust within the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. From where you sit, what do you find suspicious about this whole charade, if I may call it that way?
Thank you. Good evening. Interestingly, I'm agreeing with all the lawyers, both of them. I think I'm getting older. I can see sense in what all of them are saying. I think that, questioning IEBC could be different from bashing IEBC. Those are two different things. Yes, by any chance, ask questions, hold them accountable. They have a role, as Mambule have said. They have a need to explain and do this in a very fair, transparent way, as Kipchumba Karori is explaining. But I think there is a difference between questioning and working in a campaign to besmirch or to make them look bad. There is no question that when it comes to the matter of election, there is no Chebukati side and DCI side. The body with authority to conduct election is the IEBC. And that is very clear according to the constitution that Wakili Mambuleo has given. Therefore, you wonder, is this a decoy? Is this a scandal, a decoy, and the real rigging is going on somewhere? Is it supposed to be a distraction from a political thing going on, whether it is the presidential debate or lack of it? Is it a distraction? Is it a decoy? But the issue is, I cannot read the Article 88 and put Chebukati and Kinoti in the same ring and say, you guys have role for this election. One have the direct role and another one have complementary role. I think what Chebukati will have done is to probably get help from the Foreign Affairs Ministry, because the Foreign Affairs Ministry probably might understand more about the process, the validity of passport, how these people made it, than simply DCI. Remember, a Foreign Affairs Ministry can even reach beyond Kenya. So I think he might be punching above his weight a little bit, but I hope things will quiet down. I'm seeing that IBC have refused to be drawn into this. I hope this does not become another situation where Kinoti had an issue with the Director of Public Prosecution, where he started drawing files and taking them to court until he was told, stay within your line. So yes, compliment, but I think that once IBC came and explained, he needed to have stopped back and forth and understand that there is Foreign Affairs Minister, which I think could be more relevant here than investigators.
Okay, Dr. Ari, well noted, and one would assume that, you know, these election stakeholders should be working in synchrony, and such issues between police and IBC shouldn't play out in the public gallery, quote unquote. I think that's the takeaway. But Mambuleo, management in public communication by the Electoral Commission, how exactly would you rate that? Because we've seen what we've mentioned, that back and forth, IEBC releasing a statement, the DCI responding, but many might argue that perhaps it took IEBC a little bit too long, over 36 hours, to respond to those allegations that were raised by the DCI. How would you rate their management of public communication?
I want to understand that the IEBC is actually extremely overwhelmed at this moment. I am sure they are doing a lot of things at the same time to get the election going. But generally speaking, there is definitely a question about how good their communication, especially with respect to these matters, is at this moment in time. Yeah. I cannot rate them very well, and I do not see why they took that long, for instance, to answer those very simple questions. And I don't want them to look defensive when they do this, because they should always understand that Kenyans, whether institutional or personal, every time they raise some of these questions, they raise them because of the interest in the public good of this nation. So every time you are asked a question while you serve in an office in the Republic of Kenya, you should be ready to look at it and answer that question objectively. Kenyans are extremely talented at determining who between whoever is fighting with you and yourself is actually wrong on the issue. Yeah. So I really don't know why, because they have said this material belonged to IEBC. I didn't see why that matter had to get to that level. a very quick communication would probably have said the IEBC has taken note of of an issue at the airport with respect to importation of materials, and we are dealing with it. And then later say, okay, we realize that probably there was a communication problem. This was a misunderstanding. These guys were actually bringing in material for the election, and they have been contracted by a subcontractor to Smartmatic International, and it would have ended there, of course. But when you get yourself into this back and forth, you look like you're defensive, then that becomes a problem.
Well, the optics are definitely not good. Kipchumba, as you add on that, perhaps just echoing from what the IEBC commissioners and the CEO have mentioned, that they've laid out preparations for this year's general election in terms of printing materials, the breakdown of the 22 million voters. Was there a breakdown rather? We were just told it's roughly 22 point something million voters, but no breaking down into specific constituencies and whatnot. We haven't seen the KPMG report, which Kenyans are definitely waiting for it to be made public and know what exactly was unearthed in that particular report. How do you rate the preparation so far?
I think you have to understand something, Jesse, that we have a very interesting political environment in this country. And for a moment, I agree with Mamboleo. Elections do not belong to politicians. That is the greatest mistake we do as a country. We assume that because you are vied, you are the stakeholder. No. It is Kenyans voting for the next directors of company Kenya Incorporated. So it is us who are going to vote for the next directors. So it is more about Kenyans than it is about leaders. And for that matter, whatever preparations IEBC have done or have failed to do, it affects how we are going to enter into a social contract with the next administration for 5 years. So what must be done is that the voice of every vote must count at the table. And if whatever they do, whether perceptive, real, or imagined, they must do to make sure that whatever the votes that they announce, we are content that that is what any or each candidate got. When we come to the issue of preparation, they have done their level best. You have to remember that the people who are crying loud now, the politicians, are the same people who have not been giving IEBC a budget. That's why when I sit here, I do not say IEBC are not prepared. You just give people money 6 months to an election and you expect them to do miracles. They should have had capacity building. They should have made sure that the systems are working. But all along, what has been happening, we've been giving them salaries. They have not been doing in terms of capacity. But that being said and done, we are not telling IEBC to run away from their responsibility. They have a duty to deliver a free, fair, verifiable election on the 9th. And it is not that it is a favor. They must do it. And what also Kenyans must do at this juncture, IEBC are grappling with so many things to make sure that the puzzle of the 9th is in order. What we must do is to help them where it is possible. But what we can't sympathize with IEBC is one thing. I understand, or I hope they have a consultant, a communication consultant. And also I am of the opinion that where we have reached, there are so many critical things that we need to have a briefing, a press briefing by IEBC at least twice a week or even once daily, so that, yes, all of us walk the journey that they are going through. If there is something they are receiving, we know there are 2 Venezuelans who are coming with stickers. Even if it is a useless thing as a sticker, we know they are coming, so that everybody knows. Even if they were to come, they are carrying them in a carrier bag, the same we used to get things from our supermarket. Nobody will have an issue because we will know that we were told in advance. But because of how Kenyans have been treated by successive governments, we have very low deficiency of trust on our government institutions. That's why when we see somebody saying, I am doing this, we ask ourselves, how much has he stolen? It is not that Kenyans have any problem. It is because we don't trust these institutions.
We are highly suspicious lot.
Yeah, and we are rightly so, because that's why somebody gets 10 trillion of loan and we can't see where he took it to.
Jesse, briefly, something very small. And I want to urge all persons who get the opportunity to serve in various positions in the public interest, in various offices in the Republic of Kenya. We are coming from a background of opaqueness where institutions do not feel the necessity to share information on critical matters which affect Kenyans. Okay? That is why the framers of this constitution put in place Article 33. In fact, you are required to ensure that you carry Kenyans along the process and never leave them behind.
Right.
Because if you do so, you're going to be in trouble. Now, this is what we must understand, that this information is not secret. All right? This information belongs to Kenyans. And every person serving in any office in the Republic of Kenya should be ready and willing at all times to share information that is ready for sharing when it is ready for sharing. We should never feel that we have to have this information for ourselves as IEBC or as DCI or whichever other institution. That is what creates the problem, because people are trying to select which information to give and which information not to give. Kenyans are entitled to all this information because you are expending 5 billion, 10 billion on their behalf. They have an interest in this election. I mean, if you conduct this election wrongly, the consequences are dire on this nation.
Okay.
So all of us are concerned. We need to work with IEBC all the process, all the way. Let us support them as we should as Kenyans, but let also them be transparent and accountable and tell us this is exactly what is happening every stage of the way.
Okay, as we take a short break, Daktari, I'm sure you're still with us. We'll definitely want to evaluate what exactly IEBC has been doing, because looking at some of the challenges that are emanating from 2013, 2017, 2022, these are similar challenges. And one begs the question, what exactly has IEBC been doing? Because still persisting challenges, procurement of technology equipment. Kenyans are equally unclear as to whether the audit of the equipment that was used in 2017 was done. We hear more equipment was bought in 2022. We'll come back with that particular question, Daktari. Please stay with us. But even as we take a short break, this particular edition of Kivumbi 2022 coming to you live, courtesy of Scooper News. And we've just placed a poll right there asking, do you think IEBC is prepared to conduct free and fair elections? Yes, 43%, 57% say no, and just sampling one or two comments. Allow me to. I believe the elections will be watched and supervised by all Kenyan people, and it's the people's will and power to make it free and fair. One more comment from Nick Ongeso, who says there are outstanding crucial issues that must be addressed by all relevant election stakeholders in order to ensure the credibility of this year's polls. Every Kenyan needs assurance whether or not the elections will truly be credible, peaceful, fair, and luckily the majority of these concerns have been addressed by IEBC. Let's keep the conversation ongoing on social media at KTN News KE. Let's take that short break. We'll be back with much more on the deliberations right here on Kivumbi 2022. Don't go anywhere.